that I showed you earlier, the laptop, the portable SSD, the television, the DVD player, the JBL speaker, the Harman speaker, the car, the Suzuki Jimny, the microwave, and the smart oven air fryer, and all the things that I showed earlier have one thing in common. They would not be possible if it were not for those two people, Jack Kilby and Robert Noyce, with the invention of the integrated circuit. So an integrated circuit, or a microchip, is a compact assembly of electronic components including transistors, resistors, capacitors, and other elements fabricated onto a single piece of semiconductor material, which is typically silicon. Now, this is very important because the choice of silicon has made it possible for mass manufacturing of ICs to happen because silicon is widely available in the world. So, first I wanted to talk about Jack Kilby. He's an electrical engineer from the Texas Instruments, and he first invented the first working integrated circuit in 1958. And his prototype was a simple circuit that integrated a few components on a single piece of semiconductor material. So how did he do this? Funny story, he was new in working for Texas Instruments, which initially was a mining corporation, but then they also wanted to venture out into electronics. And then, so every year, all of the employees in Texas Instrument gets to have a 2-week vacation that is mandatory that they take it. But because he is new as an employee, he was not allowed to take the vacation leave, and he was alone in the office for 2 weeks. And there he was able to have the, I guess, solitude and the opportunity to be able to think without other people around. And then he was able to innovate on the integrated circuit. So this is big because before all these things, the components of electronics, the resistors, transistors, and all these things were wired with long wires. And he was the one who was able to first invent it without having to use long wires in just one single piece of material. So before, you could have like a big motherboard of a big thing with just, with components, and then he was able to put it together into just one small thing, right? That is really cool. So, do you guys remember, because I'm a 90s kid, right? When you first went to computer class, the computers were really big, they were really thick, and we used to have things such as floppy disks. Imagine, during that time, the IC was already invented. So, progressing now in the 2020s or 2024, we have very small electronics. And this wouldn't be possible because of that, if not for the IC or the microchip. So, if it wasn't for the microchip that was invented, or the IC, or the integrated circuit as they call it, electronics would be much, much more bigger, bulkier, and it would take up so much space just to make one simple device, such as a calculator that would add up numbers, such as basic arithmetic. Like your calculator, which is this small, would be something this big if it wasn't for the IC circuit. So imagine, things like that we use right now wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for the IC circuit. Like, like portable laptops, small handheld devices as smartphones that can compute very complex numbers, that can connect us to social media, that can have cameras that have the capabilities of DSLRs. These things wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the IC circuit. So this is why I really chose this topic, because it is super pivotal to the way we live right now in the modern world. Even though the development of the IC circuit took decades, yet there's been like, insurmountable amount of development in the electronics industry, which is like one of the biggest industry that uses semiconductors. So, every day the integrated circuit has a big impact on our lives. So, electrical engineers are pretty cool people, right? The second person who invented the integrated circuit is Robert Noyce, who was working for the Fairchild Semiconductor Company. But what is different between Robert Noyce's invention was that instead of using germanium, he used silicon as the material. And like I said, that is very pivotal because that is what we use now in the mass manufacturing of semiconductor electronics. This allowed for a lot of techniques or methodologies in manufacturing semiconductor industry, semiconductors. Like techniques such as the planar process, which is where you add layers and layers of silicon that make it compact, that's able to put like gigabytes and gigabytes of information into one small piece, has been made possible because we are using silicon and we are able to use those techniques such as layering, etching, which allows to have the communication of the small electronic devices between them. So yeah, that's why I really included Robert Noyce, because he also founded Intel, who played a critical role in developing microprocessors. So they're able to be the ones to create the first commercially available microprocessors for computers. So this is really like pivotal. So imagine kung ikaw yung nag-invent ng certain thing, right? Let's say you are in the shoes of Jack Kilby. He was working in Texas Instruments, which was of course located in Texas during that time. Right now they have many offices. So he was able to make the first IC to combine different elements into one. However, he was overshadowed by Robert Noyce and his colleagues. See, Robert Noyce, he was working in Fairchild Semiconductor, which is in Mountain View, California, which is now near where the Silicon Valley is. Not exactly, but still in Northern California, right? So imagine this far larger company, far more recognized people as engineers. He's overshadowed by them. So Jack Kilby was he filed his patent during February 1959, and Robert Noyce filed his patent in July 1959. However, Noyce's patent was granted on April 1961, whereas Kilby's patent was awarded in June 1965, 4 years later. So how would you feel if you were the first one who was to invent something so great, yet it took longer for you to get your patent award as compared to someone who had more resources and was in a more parang social na lugar like in California, whereas with Jack Kilby, he's in in Texas. However, both of them did receive the Nobel Peace Prize awards for their achievements.